Some things never cease to amaze me. Sunrises, hitting a golf ball straight, and the overwhelming ignorance of the common person. Here's a thought. Use Form Bs to determine classification. This, in fact, is competitive balance. Season 8 of Sun Coaches Podcast, where not everyone is funny or tells funny stories, but everyone has a story. Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 8, and today I'm excited to be joined by the head football coach of Jackson County, coming off a great year this year, Coach Korey. Thanks for being on with us.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on.
Well, as always, I normally ask people where they're from to start off, but I understand you're from Lilburn, Georgia, and grew up in Parkview.
Yes, sir. I grew up in Lilburn, Georgia. Was actually born in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we moved to the Atlanta area when I was a young lad, 2 years old, and we happened to be in Lilburn. We were actually zoned for Shiloh up until my middle school years, and then we were rezoned. That is not a recruiting tactic. That's a true rezoning. And when Gwinnett was booming like crazy, and so we ended up being Parkview people.
Yeah, my wife grew up across the street, the neighborhood across the street from Stone Mountain. Like literally, like go across the street and there's a neighborhood back there, and that's where she lived when they lived there. And I told you off air that her and her brother had gone to middle school there before they moved, but that was back before it got to where it is now as far as growth and everything else. But it was booming at the time.
Yeah, it was. It's, the 90s in Gwinnett. I kind of feel like I'm living that a little bit in Jackson County right now, to be honest. But, it's one of those times that, I'm not trying to get, on a recruiting tangent or whatever, but, you grew up where you lived, you got on the bus and you went to school, and that's where you played ball, and you didn't think about going anywhere else. Things have changed a little bit for sure.
They have. So you went to Parkview. Who was your high school coach?
Yeah, so I played for Cecil Flowe, and Cecil was there. Gosh, I don't know how many years Cecil ended up being the head coach at Parkview, but just a tremendous influence on me. He's been so good to me, coaching-wise as well, to kind of help get my foot in the door. It's amazing how, the relationships through ball sustain, regardless player coach to player, or coach to coach. And sometimes those things, they become, both of those relationships. And just played for a lot of really unbelievable men in the late 90s at Parkview, a time that I truly cherish.
So did you just play football, or did you play other sports as well?
I did. I ran track because they told us we needed to. And that was kind of a football thing. So, track wasn't really my thing. I'm not a fan of running in circles. So I tried to be as short a sprinter as I could. And, when you're short, you can be quick, but the old speed is not necessarily in your favor, so to speak. So it's something we did in the off season. And, but yes, I was a football guy.
So when you got ready to go to college, you have an opportunity to play, or did you just go to school to go to school?
Yeah, I did, so I did not play until my junior year at Parkview. Some folks may know Larry Massey, but he was the secondary coach, and I played safety. And, we had some good players during that time. My junior year, Buster Faulkner, who's the offensive coordinator at Florida, was a sophomore. And he and I got called into Cecil's office, and I didn't know if we were in trouble or, if we're going to get kicked off the team. But Buster's sophomore year, my junior year, he said, we're going to make a change, and both of you guys are in the lineup tonight. We're headed to Habersham Central. And this is my junior year, about game 6, and Buster's sophomore year. And the rest is history for Buster Faulkner. I just get the leftovers. And but man, that junior year we won the state championship, beat Tift County in the state championship, and we thought we were destined for a matchup with Brookwood. They were upset by Tift in the semis in the Dome. That was back when the semis were played in the Dome, which I kind of appreciate, because more teams had the opportunity. I know it's expensive to play in Mercedes now, but just some unbelievable memories of guys that I still am really close to this day from our Parkview days. And then, you asked about college. So had some opportunities to go play some small ball. It's like I tell our players all the time, football's done with you long before you're done with it, and was destined to walk on at Samford University and got there. And, I guess I figured out that football was done with me. And so I did not play at Samford and just was a student. And, probably a regret of mine. I thought it might hurt me coaching wise, but I wouldn't trade those 4 years at Samford for anything.
So you knew you wanted to teach and coach when you went into school?
I did. I think it was, the relationships that I had with my coaches and the influence that they had, and just being able to stay around ball even though I was done playing was a big thing for me. And those relationships helped me in the future to, as I finished my undergrad, I went back and got my master's and teaching certificate. A little less expensive place, Piedmont College, and at the same time was doing some electrical work for my father-in-law. And I figured out really quickly that was cool to know how to do that stuff with my hands, but I didn't want to do that the rest of my life. So the connections that I had from my high school days and my coaches that were still in the business helped me kind of get my foot in the door.
So you and Manuel Labor didn't get along at all?
I tell you what, I'm working on finishing my basement right now, trying to do most of it myself. And I will say this, some of the things that I learned have saved me a good bit of money, and I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt, especially when you do something on your own, you see, because I tell people this all the time. We have the kind of job that we don't see our finished product until 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Whereas I'm in awe and jealous of people that are in trades or mechanics or things like that, because when they finish, they're like, I just built that house.
That's
Or,
right.
I just fixed this car. I just did this, where we don't see our finished product until much further down the line. And it kind of makes you have to have delayed gratification. So that's kind of cool that you have that skill set that you can actually do stuff. I can't do anything. I have to hire everything out. And it's
You
like a
can play
running
golf.
joke.
That's all that matters.
Well, badly. I mean, I can advance the ball forward. That's about it. But so what was your first job, teaching, coaching job out of school?
Yeah, so I was hired in 2005 at Collins Hill High School. Larry Sherrill was the head football coach at Collins Hill. Alan Faring had been the longtime coach there. They had come from Arkansas. Coach Sherrill came with him, and then Coach Faring had to retire early. He was battling cancer, and so Coach Sherrill was in charge of the program there, and I was hired at Collins Hill. Was there 5 years. Probably the best thing that I've ever done in my career. Year one, I was a freshman coach, and we had three total coaches. And somehow I was calling the defense, and I didn't quite, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And man, I tell you what, it makes you learn it in a hurry. And I knew that I cared about kids, and I knew that I loved ball, and I knew there were going to be a lot of trial and error in that time. But what a great experience it was for me coaching freshman ball.
So what'd you teach?
So I started at Collinsville. It was back in '05. Is we still had the technical track in Gwinnett. So I was tasked with the technical geography class, and essentially they decided that they were going to put the coaches with the students that maybe had a few more challenges, or maybe we're going to choose an alternate track other than college. And I tell you what, I don't think I'd trade it for the world, because you learn how to deal with kids. You also learn that you know maybe college isn't for everyone, and that's okay. And I feel like, not trying to get on an education tangent here, but we've gotten away from that a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with the technical track. We talked about doing electrical work earlier. Like, those dudes make more money than a lot of us coaches do. And so enjoyed that. I taught a few other things, social studies wise, U.S. history at Collins Hill during my 5 years there. And then, in 2010, we opened Lanier High School, and I was a part of that inaugural staff, and I moved to PE, and I've been in PE ever since.
So what was it like opening up a brand new school?
Well, I'll be honest, I am thankful that I was not the head coach. But with that being said, I feel like I had a front row seat to, all of the failures. And there were some successes also, but we said early on, one of these days we were going to write a book about year one because, you feel like you've seen it all. So Lanier fed off of North Gwinnett. It just fed off of one school. So North Gwinnett did a great job of, keeping the advantages that they had. And so our pick of the litter those first couple of years was great kids, not great players. And so, here I am. I'm thrown into a coordinator role. Billy Wells, who is I guess he's not the principal at North Hall anymore. He just took a job in the county office, but has been the principal at North Hall High School for the last several years. Was the first head coach at Lanier and was also the athletic director. So he looks at me and David Willingham, who's now the defense coordinator at Milton, and we're at Collins Hill together. And he says, "Hey, I want you guys to go with me, and I want you to be coordinators." And at the time, I think I was 27. And again, I'm just trying to, learn the difference between 4-3 and 3-4 and what in the world that means, right? So we go to Lanier and we play JV ball for the first 2 years. And, he tells me, "I want you to call plays on offense." And I'd been on defense, but I'd called plays offensively for the JV. And so I really learned what coaching was all about, especially when you don't have a ton of talent. What can you do to, keep the clock running? What can you do to finish a drive and a kick, regardless, maybe it's a punt, right? Those things matter still today. And I'm thankful for that time as we began the program at Lanier.
And how long were you at Lanier?
So I was there 12 years. And after 4 years, Billy came to me in July and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to be the athletic director at North Hall, and I think you're going to be the head coach." And I said, "It's July, coach. Are you sure?" And we had just changed principals. And so I guess for me, it was a little bit of time of figuring out, well, I guess he's taking care of me from a timing standpoint. Right. And so they didn't have a choice that first year. We were already, basically in the season, late July. It was over dead week. And thankfully, we had a really good group coming back. We had won a playoff game the year before Billy's last year as the head coach, and so the history's kind of been written from there. And really thankful for those men that gave me a shot, maybe before I was ready and when I was a young guy. And I'm just a believer that being in the right place at the right time is so big in what we do. And if you're ever too big to, like we talked about off air, pick up the mop bucket or do the laundry, then this probably isn't the profession for you.
So your first head coaching job, you kind of got to ease into it a little bit because you had been there. Do you think that helped with your transition?
Yeah, no doubt. Billy had done a really good job of kind of putting me in leadership responsibilities, almost as if he was preparing for that time where he became an athletic director. And so I think that was crucial. And then just, he included me on touchdown club meetings and, as we began the school, purchasing, things of that nature. As the athletic director, some of those head coach duties kind of fell in my lap because he was doing AD things. And so at the time I thought, well, maybe he's just kind of, delegating as all the good coaches do, but really was preparing me for that time. And then by that point, we kind of had our true kids, North wasn't stealing as many of them as they were in the first couple of years. And it was a very talented area. And we had some really good players. And so had a lot of success the first year. We were fortunate. We went undefeated in the regular season. And I think we thought we were pretty dang good. And then we played the old thing called wing T in round one. And as a 1 seed, we're upset. And I tell you what, I think I learned more from that game and that loss, and also the humility of being a head football coach that I still carry to this day.
Yeah, everybody always says that first head coaching job is like drinking water from a fire hydrant, and you just can't. It's hard. But if you're groomed for it, I would think it's not as. There's still stuff you're not ready for. I mean, the only thing that can prepare you for the nightmare of being a head coach, in my mind, the things that you have to deal with is to do it.
That's right. Yeah, and meeting with some of my staff currently doing exit meetings, and I apologize to them that we're still doing those in February, but that's kind of the way it goes. And just talking to some of those guys that I feel like, if they want to be or ready to be coordinators, and some of them will say, well, I don't know if I'm ready to be a coordinator. And my response is always, well, you're never ready till you're ready. We've got some really good guys on our current staff, but what I learned early on is I had to give things up. I was running the weight room, I was calling offense, and I was the head football coach. And, you talk about stress level, you talk about the reason probably why I don't have any hair. You start putting, that season weight on because you're not taking care of yourself. All those things take a toll on you. And we were fortunate to have a really cohesive staff there at Lanier that had been together for quite some time. And so started kind of giving some of those responsibilities away. And I feel like we got better because I was able to manage, the program, and they were able to be experts at what they were good at. So a lesson learned, those first couple of years as a head coach. I don't know if I'd go back, but I feel like I learned so much in those few years that it's served me well recently.
So you went 8 years as the head coach there, correct?
Yeah, so I guess I was there. See, 7. So 7 as the head coach, and maybe I was 8. They all run together. 12 total. So maybe I left in the 12th. Coach, I don't know.
I got
I
you.
don't know.
I was trying to do the math.
2014 was my first year as the head coach. So whatever the math is there. So
I got you. So then, where did you go after that? Is that when you got to Jackson County?
No. So, great question. So COVID happened. And that final year for me at Lanier, we had started the season 4-1, and we finished 4-5. We had one game canceled, and the 4 that we lost in a row to finish the season, we did not have a full roster. We played Central Gwinnett on a Friday night, and then on Monday, I remember having to, not getting political by any means, but having to identify any player that had touched a certain player on the opposite team so that we could quarantine them. And that ended up being our entire defense. And so we played a game with our JV defense. And then the 14th day of that quarantine, we played Buford on a Saturday after those guys had come back for a day. And it was just one of those years that, again, I feel like we could write a book about. I thought it was important that we played regardless because, those kids that were at practice, they deserve to play. They practice just like those other guys do. And, a lot of that stuff was out of our control. And I think what it did for me is maybe I didn't go crazy, but it made me reassess, maybe just a new environment for myself. And so had the opportunity to go to Knoxville, Tennessee, and Knoxville Catholic High School. Was there 2 seasons, and took that job through some mutual friends and connections, and quickly learned that I am not a private school guy. Enjoyed my time in Knoxville, made some really good friends that I still talk to this day, but I did everything I could to get back to Georgia as quick as I could.
And that's when you got the Jackson County job.
That is correct.
Okay. So you get to Jackson County, it's your 3rd head coaching job. And what'd you do? What were some things you did different? What were some things you learned? What were some things you changed? Or by this time, had you kind of knew what your system was at this point?
Yeah, I think that, I think you'd agree with this. It's all about who you work with. And I knew who to target quickly to try to go get. And then you don't get everybody you want because, you don't just have endless teaching spots. A lot of respect for the guys that had been there before. Coach McCorder, one of the all-time winningest coaches in the state of Georgia history. And he and we still live in the same neighborhood. I run into him, every once in a while and have some really, really good conversations with him. And he helped me early on, kind of give me the lay of what he thought, was needed. And, I took most of that and kind of, put it in the back of my head and really just, was fortunate to be able to hire the right kind of guys. And Coach had some really good guys on his staff as well. And I think, Jackson County from a growth standpoint has kind of been on the cusp for quite some time. We're growing like crazy. And And we were fortunate to have some groups come up that had been winners. And I don't think there's one key ingredient other than a lot of times just being at the right place at the right time, and just thankful for the opportunity that I was given here. And so it's been 3 years, and this year we did some things that have never been done at Jackson County. I can remember at Collins Hill. We talk about old coach stories. A buddy of mine that I still talk to this day, Jim Tiller. Not sure if anybody's familiar with him. He's retired and hunting or fishing every day, but he would say that Jackson County is a coach killer. He'd said that's where coaches go to die. And I always thought of that. I kept that in the back of my mind. And so, when this job came open, it was probably more out of me. I knew the area well because I've had two nephews that have gone through the program, one that graduated last year and one that is currently a junior. And so I'd kind of been eyeing it from afar, but I thought to myself, man, I look at the history of this thing and it's not been real good. And, Coach McCord was here, and my goodness, he's one of the best coaches in state history. And, you know, uh, for some reason, God smiled on us and our staff and our players, and things have gone really well over these last 2 years for us.
Well, the lessons learned is growing up in a multi-school county and then working in the multi-school county probably helps that you're in a multi-school county with a city school system right there too.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean,
and
it kind of lets you
Gwinnett.
know how to navigate through, I'm not going to say sharing athletes, but you have a zone, you have a district, you have these kids go to this school, these kids go to that school, and you kind of know how to play. You're not a one school county. Like I'm at Dodge
That
County, we have one school. It's Dodge County. There's not
right.
another one. We don't compete with anybody else for kids.
Well, and one of the things you got to figure out is, okay, I'm in a multi-school county, and so if I want something, let's just be honest. That other school's got to either want it also, or we've got to work together to figure out how to get it for both. And so, that's a piece of the puzzle. Having been in Gwinnett and so many schools in Gwinnett that, I, I guess I was used to, what we were going to do as a program, we were going to do on our own, because what they did for one, they had to do for all. And Gwinnett did a lot of things really well, but as a touchdown club, you kind of did your own deal, and they left you alone. And so, that was a blessing as well. But yeah, I think that's a big part of it, and we're growing. I mean, we're going to open a new school in the fall of 27, Houston High School, and who knows what that does and what that looks like. But it'll be a fun ride while we watch it.
So was this year a culmination of the previous 2 years? Was there a 5-year plan, 3-year plan? I mean, did you look toward this year and go, you know what, I think this is going to be the year? What was the off season like coming into this year for you guys?
Yeah, I think if I'm being honest, we had a really good group that first year of seniors and lost 2 games in double overtime. So we were 4-6 in year one, and really I felt like we should have been 6-4. And some of that is we were fortunate in year two after that first year to change regions, and so you know some of the teams fell out, and then we added some new teams, and so that gave us a little, breath of fresh air. And, I knew that this current senior class and this current junior class is a group of kids that had won, regardless of whatever level. And they were used to winning. They were hard workers. And so, year two, we go 8-3, and we lose to Clark Central. So we finished second in the region, and we host a playoff game for the first time in Jackson County history, which was great. And your ticket is the defending state champions coffee in the first round. And so they make the trek to Jackson County, and they got off the bus, and it looked a lot better than us. And they ran a lot faster than we did, and we kind of held our own there for a half. And I tell you what, through that loss, I learned a lot about our kids, and I think our kids understood what it looks like and what we were chasing. So that probably added a good bit of fuel for us heading into this season, returning most of our guys. And we still got some young players that have played and played a lot of ball. They played a lot of ball since they were sophomores and freshmen, and so we got a good bit of returners coming up. We got to replace some guys up front, but depth wise and numbers wise, we're in a good situation. So the question for us now is, what are we going to do with a little bit of a taste of success? Can we sustain that? And obviously that's the age old question.
Well, for our listeners out there, I want you to think back to last season. How much time did you lose to create practice plans from scratch, building scouting reports, reteaching concepts you installed in spring? Spiral XO is the all-in-one platform built to give you that time back. Playbook creation, practice planning, game prep, in-game analytics, built-in player quizzes, and more. Programs using it are saving 10-plus hours every week. That's more time for actually coaching. This off-season is the perfect time to get everything dialed in before you hit the field. Book a free demo at spiralxo.com or call 470-222-3039 and talk to Coach Stacy Bell's son. Chandler will get you hooked up with Spiral XO. Good time during the off-season to look at some things, go to clinics, find some things that are cool and neat. And I saw some stuff this weekend down in Orlando at Glacier that I didn't know existed. Of course, that probably has more to do with me being old than anything else, but check out Spiral XO. So changing gears a little bit, gone through the history and everything, let's talk philosophy. So what are some of your non-negotiables when it comes to taking a head coaching job? Like, what's the first thing when you showed up at Jackson County, you're like, all right, I got to do this, this, and this? Well, take us through week one.
Yeah, I think the biggest piece is, who can you bring alongside you? I think it is so important. And I learned this the hard way in Knoxville. So I took the job probably off of COVID hangover, for lack of better terms. And so, when you move states, it's going to be really difficult to talk any of your guys into going with you. And it is extremely important, even if it's just one, to have that one, because that person has been in the foxhole with you. That person is quote unquote your guy, so to speak. And I knew that was important when I took the job in Knoxville, but obviously I didn't listen to myself. And that's not a knock on anything that went on there. I just probably more than anything missed that camaraderie that had been built at Lanier. And so when I took the job at Jackson County, was able to offensively bring on David Hendricks, who's been with me back to the days of Lanier. And so that was really important to kind of hit the ground running, because when you start talking about what you want to do with the program, when you start talking about off-season workouts and you start installing offense, defense, things of that nature, that person is right there with you. They understand the expectations, and they can help communicate that. So that's probably the most important thing. And then, it's about, let's be honest, if you don't have all your kids in the weight room, then you're not taking that job. Or at least if you take that job, you better know what's at stake. So luckily they had a good foundation of what was going on program wise. And I tell Coach McWhorter quite often that, maybe it was his deal to kind of soften it up to what reality needed to be, in Jackson County. And then I was able to come in there and kind of, pigtail off of that. But the biggest piece for us is our superintendent had taken the job a couple months before I did. And, I think it's important that you work for someone that, wants to be the best in everything that you do, and doesn't just, use that as lip service, but truly is willing to help. And, that's not always a yes right now, but it is a thoughtful, pondering of what you need and figuring out a way to, to skin that cat. So I feel like, we've got leadership in place from the top down that's allowed us to be successful. And I think when they see that you're real as a coach, and, you're not always going to be on your A game, you're going to make mistakes. But at the same time, if you're in it for the kids, then, a lot of good things happen. So I'd say those are a few of the things. And, let's be honest, you got to have all the things going in the right direction to have a shot. And we've been fortunate to do that.
Yeah, I thought it was funny about 5 or 6 years ago when Georgia started having a lot of success, and with Kirby Smart, and he started talking about vertical alignment, and it became the new buzzword. You got to be vertically aligned. And the whole time, all I kept thinking was, Well, his dad was a high school coach. He gets it. You know,
Right.
everybody's got to be on the same page from the very top down to the very bottom. And if you
Well,
have that in place, it makes it a little bit easier.
and this thing's hard enough, when you have that, and so, or when you don't have it, but having it at least gives you a shot, and you still got to have players, and you still got to be able to go and get coaches, and those things matter. You got to be able to raise money. That's probably been the most one of the under the radar things. Like, this place is growing like crazy, and our parents are unbelievable, and our community, they want to win, and now they've got a taste of it. The ability to provide resources for our kids that go above what the school can do has been unbelievable. To watch our community as we hosted Glen Academy in round one, really the week before, won the region championship, played Habersham, and just it's Halloween night, and our place is absolutely packed. It is electric, and there is nothing like a Friday night. And we carried that into the quarterfinals, and just watching people get a taste of that. I've said it often. There is nothing like watching a community catch fire, and winning is contagious, and we're fortunate to have had a little taste of that this year.
So, what are some ways over the years that your philosophy regarding spring practice has changed, or has it changed? How do you approach how you do spring? I mean, I understand it's different everywhere, and it's different
Yeah, I
depending
think
upon where you are. So, what are some things you like to do or get out of spring?
I think people would agree with this because of being able to compete in spring. You almost have sped up what didn't happen until summer from a evaluation standpoint. Um, we do a lot of things in the off season, 4-on-1s. Obviously, we're in the weight room every morning for an hour and a half, but competing against another team at a large school, I think is a big deal, because it's one thing to watch a kid run around for 8 days, 9 days, in spring, and you think you know what you got, but you really don't know until the lights come on. So it's been beneficial for us. I got a lot of respect for Tommy Jones, and so we've gone against Cherokee Bluff the last couple of years, and there's some people that are trying to win a spring game and be able to put it on Twitter, or I guess I'm supposed to call it X now, but you know, we're not trying to win a spring game. We're trying to get as many kids, meaningful reps in a game like scenario. We don't put the score up, and maybe that might be somebody's cup of tea. You might have just taken a job and you need to win a social media battle or whatever. But I truly believe that when you get an opportunity to compete against somebody else, it kind of speeds it up from an evaluation standpoint. So moving into summer, now I've got an idea of where somebody fits on the depth chart. Doesn't mean that won't change, but it's a lot easier when you're competing with pads on, as opposed to having to evaluate, underwear football, all these 7-on-7s that we, do in the summer. So that's probably one of the things I would say. Maybe a negative of that is that, although you say we're not going to game plan for this team, or we're not going to work on what they do, you probably lose a day or two doing that, because as a coach, that's just naturally what you do. So we try to fight that. And that's kind of why I think it's important to play somebody that and you trust, and you understand that they're trying to get the same thing out of it as well. But, we've got such numbers that I think spring practice is really important for us. I would have said 10 years ago, when I was at Lanier, it was really important from a recruiting standpoint, because if we weren't having spring practice, there was other programs that were. And so those coaches were evaluating those kids that were coming in as college coaches. But if we weren't doing it, then they weren't going to evaluate our kids. So it was a necessity in Gwinnett. Now, some of that's changed because of the way recruiting is. So I don't know if that still applies to the nth degree, but those are just some of the things that I think are important with spring. And the most important is, do we stay healthy? Do we stay healthy? Do we develop that depth that we need? And then let's get going in the summer. The summer is my favorite time of the year. You don't have to worry about, not that school's not important, but you don't have to worry about school. It's all ball, and you just get to hang out with kids and and play football. And that's the beauty of what we do.
Well, you just segued right into that for me. So how do you approach summer? What does your June and July look like?
Yeah, we bring our kids in 4 days a week in June, and we lift and we work on ball. We'll work some type of, movement skills, but we try to make it football related. And then we spend, to be honest, probably the summer, something that I transitioned to probably 3 years ago was we work on special teams probably more than a lot of people do in the summer, because it allows you to, number one, figure out who's on what team. Number two, get all of your scheme in, and truly work the operation, slow down and work the operation of the snap and hold and kick and the punt snap, and how fast are we snapping it back there? Do we need to reevaluate who our snapper is? Do we have a punter? I mean, there've been years where, maybe 15 years ago, I'd have gotten to the scrimmage game of a fall, and do we have a punter? And so, it's been really big for us to spend a lot of time on special teams, and then I think it's important. We get done, for the most part, we're done by 11:30 or noon. Something we've added here at Jackson County is we feed our guys through a nonprofit program, breakfast and lunch, and that is free of charge. And so, everybody tries to figure out the nutrition piece, and some people have, unlimited resources to where they can just go do it themselves. And I'd say we're probably a mix of both. We're able to, but I'm also a believer that if I can figure out a way for somebody to donate that, then I've got, more resources for something else in our program. So it picks back up after dead week, and padded camps I think are big. From a contact standpoint, again, just accelerating that evaluation.
So now that you're starting to transition into being an old head, what are some things about the high school game in Georgia that have changed since you got started, good, bad, or indifferent?
Yeah, everybody wants to talk about the moving around. And listen, I'm a firm believer that people have choices. And the first thing that I heard when I got to Jackson County was, if we can just keep our kids, then we'll have a shot. And maybe that was the case. And my reaction was, well, let's water our own grass and let's build a place that people don't feel like they have to leave. And I think that's occurring over the last 3 seasons. And winning helps with that. But it's just the ease of moving around. I think unfortunately we've taught kids that if things don't go your way, then just go change your environment. You and I grew up in a time that, not to sound like an old head, but I guess I am, where if you didn't play, your dad didn't go meet with the coach. He said, well, you got to get better, son, because he trusted the coach. And, I'm thankful to be in Jackson County where we have that for the most part, but times have changed. So, and listen, there's people that transfer for good reasons. I'm not a fan of people, coercing those transfers, and that could be a whole nother conversation, a whole nother podcast. But that has certainly changed, in my time. This is year 21 for me, so I feel like I've seen it, firsthand. And I don't know what the answer is. I understand that, we can't investigate everything, and we've lived by an honor system for so long, but it's been going on for a while. And you probably, being the doctor that you are, and the legend that I was reading on the message boards long before, this whole Twitter thing and this whole podcast thing became a big deal, would have an answer for something like that.
I got no answers. I've got suggestions, but people wouldn't like them. I can tell you
Right.
that. And what people don't remember, or people don't want to admit, is people have been recruiting kids since the 1920s.
Yep.
This isn't a new phenomenon. The only thing that's changed is they've gotten more adept at staying under the radar, and it's more technical, and it's much more involved. And now that there's social media, much more people know about it.
Sure.
Just like everything else. It's just one of those things as far as that goes. What about what are some advice you would give to a young coach that if came to you and said, Coach, or if your son said, hey, I want to be a coach, what would you tell him?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is I feel like I had opportunities early on as a young guy because I was willing to, and listen, I don't I don't stay as late as maybe I used to. My wife might disagree with that. I try to get my work done and then also try to, do right by my family. But, if you're always trying to get out the door as soon as your quote unquote responsibilities are over, then I think you miss a valuable piece of what coaching is all about. You and I talked about earlier, about doing the laundry, about the mop bucket, right? If something needs to be done, instead of sitting on your hands in the office, getting it done. For me, I was willing to do that as a young coach. And so I think, some of the guys that I was around that I had a lot of respect for, that I wanted to do it so they didn't have to, they took note of that. And so I try to, emulate that even as a head coach. If I'm too good of a dude to do the laundry, then we've got problems. And if my coaches don't see me doing those things as a head football coach, then they don't see the value of that. And what that does is it makes them get up and get to work, and I think that's the biggest thing. You're never too big. Your title is never too big to do what needs to be done for a program, and that can be, broken down to the smallest thing like laundry or cleaning the locker room.
Well, Coach, you've obviously figured out what needs to be done, and your effect on young people everywhere you've been has been fantastic. I'd never talked to you before, couldn't identify you in a lineup, and when I told some of the guys that I was talking to you tonight and having you on this week, they got really excited. They're like, man, he's one of the best dudes in the business. I can't wait to hear his story, and I'm so glad you came on and shared your story with us.
Well, I appreciate it, man. And I tell you, I'm not kidding. I've followed you for a long time, and whether or not you were incognito or not, appreciate what you do. In a maybe less formal way for coaches. The old initials have changed a little bit over the years, and people just kind of put it out there. But it's always been a breath of fresh air to be able to pull that old message board up and see, what you've been doing for a long time. And so your connections run deep, and I just appreciate you.
Thanks, Coach. I sure do appreciate it.